Blood, Bilge, and Iron Balls by Alan Abbey is on the table. Today we have the French ship the Ceylon trying to escape from the British ship the Sirius. It is February the 9th, 1810, and the Ceylon is trying to get past, they've hit the east coast of Madagascar, and they're trying to slip past a British cordon composed of the Sirius and the Boatica. Now, the Boatica is way up here, probably not going to factor in. The Ceylon has turned. They tried to cut back across the wake of the Sirius, tried to slip by them. The winds are out of the east-southeast, so this would be heading upwind. Didn't work. Sirius was ready for them. As the sun rose in the east, it highlighted the ship on the horizon. They knew it had to be the one they were looking for, so the Sirius set out in hot pursuit. The Ceylon, realizing this, turned to the north. They've been racing north for about an hour or so, but at a distance of just a couple of miles, maybe about 3 to 5 miles. We don't know. We have basically massaged things because we're miniature wargamers, and we're much more interested in developing interesting scenarios than we are being accurate down to the last jot and tittle in this campaign game. On the table, I'm going to use this as really from Fighting Sail. I'm going to use this to show the wind direction. Now, really the wind direction is going to be out of the east-southeast. I'm going to go ahead and just make it 45. Hey, we're getting close to the shore. We're about 20 miles offshore. The French did that, so they have room to cut back to the left as we look at it, cut back to the west. They've got room. They didn't want to get snugged right up against the coast and leave themselves with no out. Now, they do have an opportunity. They may be able to swing back south. Probably not a great idea. Again, the British are upwind. That's going to be a real problem for them. So this also makes the angles a little easier for me. 45 degrees, a lot easier for me to visualize in my mind's eye and judge those angles as opposed to a 30-degree angle. Oh, that's going to be really hard. So I'm just going to go 45. Again, interesting scenario, cuts down on the cognitive load. I can think more about what the captains of these two respective vessels would be thinking in this campaign game. So let's look at the table. From left to right, the left side of the table is the north. The right side of the table is the south. Our minimum cannon range, when things really get interesting, is when our ships close to within 12 inches of each other. I'm playing Alan Abbey's game at half scale, and one issue I have, well, let's be honest, I have a lot of issues. But one issue I have with this particular game is that it doesn't, the ground scale is pretty accurate, but I don't know exactly what the time scale is. Is each turn 1 minute? Is each turn a half an hour? Is it 5 minutes? That would be really helpful, because what's going to happen here is that as our ships move, and it's a random, for those of you that have seen this before, I apologize for going over this in detail. There are 6 different activation phases. Note there are 3 for the British and 3 for the French. We use a card-driven system of sorts. You are either repairing your ship, you are firing your ship, or you are sailing your ship. And that means on any given turn, these ships are going to move one and then the other. We don't know who's going to go first. But ultimately, because of the situation here, where the British are trying to head off the French, we can kind of play through a number of turns without having to deal with this activation system. Whoever goes first, look, if he moves first and then he moves that distance, and then, or if he moves and then he moves, it doesn't really matter until we get to within about 12 inches of each other. So instead of starting with our ships here separated at max distance on the table, and we'll put, see, you can't even see, we'll put this guy right on the edge of the earth, at least as it's represented on my table. Right? This is where the action genuinely starts. But I'm going to go ahead and just measure it out and just move them both using their full sail speed with the wind set where it is. And when we get to that point that it actually matters who goes first, that's when we're really going to start taking a look at the table. These two evenly matched vessels both move 11 inches each turn. So after 4 turns, remember I'm half scale, so they're really only moving 5.5 inches, the Sirius begins to fall behind. Remember, they're coming at a slight angle, which means the Ceylon is going to be making a little bit more forward progress than the Sirius. It's only given that 45-degree angle about a quarter of an inch, half an inch per turn. So it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But the reason I've stopped here is to show you we really are at that 45 degrees. Now it begins to matter who's going to go first. If we slide over just a little bit more, then we can lay out our tokens. Now I will point out, had we been a little more honest and had our wind coming out of the east-southeast, that would have been at a much more oblique angle, and it would have meant that the Ceylon is moving at 2/3 speed. You want to call me out for that? You can call me out for that. Ultimately, all it really does is it just means that the Ceylon has a couple of more turns without getting shot at. It doesn't really change things all that much in the grand scheme of things. Whether this happens, like I said, this scenario takes place very early in the morning, so dusk is not going to be a factor at all. They're not going to have the evening to run away again. And in this game, we lay out our tokens like so, and we just go from left to right. The first people to move are the British. And here's where things begin to get interesting. They are at full sail, so the British will be able to move 5.5 inches, and that does put them within extreme cannon shot. It's going to be just over 10 inches. They're only going to be hitting on 6s if they get an opportunity. And wouldn't you know it, the British now do have a chance to fire at the Ceylon. We only have 3 guns. It's going to take some shooting here. And look what I found. It was hiding in my book. I do have the handy dandy cheat sheet. As you can see, when you are up to 24 inches, you roll 6s, and you only hit on 6s. So the British fire, and at extreme range, they're only going to get 1 hit. That's okay, they'll take it. Our damage is determined using a regular deck of cards, which I will cut at random to keep myself honest, to demonstrate that to you. With a 10 of spades, the British are going to do 1 gun and 1 crew hit. So the French are already in trouble because they only have, and look, the Ceylon is moving this way. So that gun that's knocked out is going to be one of these. Then we knock off 1 little crew point. They have 21 stars, or they had. Now they only have 20. But they're going to get a chance. Now the French get to return fire. And again, nothing's changed, nothing's moved. But because one of those guns is knocked out, they're only going to roll 2 dice. They also get a hit on the British. And with a 6 of diamonds, the French at that long range is going to be hitting the steerage gear. And that may be really important. Fortunately, they are sharp-eyed sailors. They've got some young lads up in the rigging, and they know what they hit. Oh, it looks like we blasted their rudder. Maybe they hit the chain. For whatever reason, that's going to affect the rest of this battle. Or is it? Because remember, the next thing that happens is the British do get a chance to repair that damage. They only have the 1 damage point. So they have 3 crew left. For every star or portion thereof, you get a chance. And that's listed. Is it on our cheat sheet for this? For each ship, cross off 1 crew point and draw the... Oh, I've been under... Wow, you got to read these, right? 1 card per ordinary hit. All right, that's fine. For each hit a ship receives, cross off 1 crew star. So that means the Sirius, in addition to taking that, is going to cross off 1 star point. It's not the whole star. And then again, because the Ceylon took a shot, you automatically cross 1 off, and then you also do what it says on the card. So they've lost 2 of their crew so far. The British ship can no longer make any turns, but because they have 3 stars, 3 crew stars, here's our Sirius one more time, with at least 1 crew remaining, they get 3 chances to fix that. We roll 3d6, and on a 5 or a 6, the damage goes bye-bye. We get a 3, 3, and a 4, so they cannot make any turns. Then we say, what's the next? It looks like the French get an opportunity to try to repair. You cannot repair cannons. It's just way too much work in the heat of battle. They have nothing to repair, so we move on to the last, and that will be the French sailing 5.5 inches. Interestingly, the French now have an opportunity to do something interesting. The problem that the French have, we can cut across their bow. We know they're not going to be able to turn. So we reduce sail. And because of the active ship, I use the Royal We. And at half sail, they are only going to move 7 inches, which means they're only going to move 3.5 inches. And if they, see, here's where having the weather gauge comes at such an advantage. If they turn, we're going to turn a little bit. Here's our turn gauge. You have to move 1 inch, okay? And then we can turn just enough that we're going to be moving at 3/4 speed. And we still have those 2 inches left that we have to move, like so. And does that put so we still have the British in our firing arc. This next turn could be really deadly. I can shuffle up my chips, and then I lay them out, and I kind of hopscotch them a little bit just to give them that one little extra shuffle. And the first up is the French sailing turn. So the French are going to just stick with, normally at half speed, 3.5, but because, is it 1/3 or is it 3/4? I think it goes, you're normally, I gotta find the page now because it's not on the little fancy cheat sheet. Here you go. Here's what the weather gauge looks like. So it's 2/3 speed and then half speed if you're going into the wind. So 2/3 of 3.25 is going to be about 2 and a little bit more. So we'll go, I guess, right about there and call it quits for the British. For the French. The French again have nothing to repair. And now the British get to fire, and unfortunately for them, the French have moved out of their fire arc. And doubly unfortunate for the British, they are smack dab in the French firing arc. So the French are going to fire. We've measured from center mast to center mast. And at a range of 7.5 inches, the French are now going to get to fire 2 shots, but instead of 6s, they are going to be hitting on 5s. They get no hits. Typical French gunnery. What are you going to do? And the British are still stuck. Now, they can cut down to half speed, which would allow them to move just 3.5 inches. But I think for this turn, they probably still want to go with the 5.5 because that puts them right there. And of course, they also have an opportunity to repair their steerage. They still do not. So next turn, no turns. We adjust the camera a little bit, drop our activation markers, cards, chits, whatever you want to call them down, shuffle them up just a little bit, and let's find out what happened. I just dragged we're going to run out of table before these boats run out of ocean. Take my word for it. The French get to sail once again, and they will do their 2 3/4. They will wind up right there. And I think maybe they want to turn just a little bit. Let's put them right back on that due west heading. Boy, we want to keep the British. We got to stay a little bit so the British are in our firing arc. Because if we get repairs, we can't do anything. This is the problem. The British now are going to sail their full... you know what they're going to do, actually? Reduce sail to half speed. Because that puts them right here. Now, they can't turn. Remember, still 3.5 inches. They cannot turn, but we know that we're going to get to fire in here. The French, the British now get to fire. They are at point blank range. They are at, this could not have gone worse. The French really needed to fire first, or have turned a little bit further, or, it was a gamble, right? If we'd stayed like this, we would have been able to return fire, assuming we survive this raking shot. We are at close range. The British are going to fire 3 times. They are going to hit on 2s. And every single hit they have will draw 2 cards, not just 1. So anything but a 1, we get 3 hits. We're going to have to draw 6 cards. Things are not looking good for the Sirius. With all 3 hits, the first thing we do is we cross off 3 of the star cards, for the Ceylon, I should say. 1, 2, 3. So 5 out of 21 are gone. Then we draw a card and we say, and we got to do these one at a time because it does really matter. The 10 of diamonds is going to be 3 more crew. Hurt bad. 1, 2, 3. Then we draw the second The Jack of Hearts will be 3 hull boxes. 1, 2, 3. Those cannot be repaired now. Once you hit the gray, that's only the first hit. The 5 of Clubs will be 1 mast box. Blam. That's the second of the hits. The Jack is 3 more mast. The foremast is now down across the deck, meaning that on subsequent turns, the fastest that the vessel can move is 9 inches or 5 at half speed, which is where we're at. By the way, when you cross off that last mast, these cannot be repaired. It's just like the hull boxes. I don't think we've seen that yet. We still have 2 more cards to draw. We draw the Queen of Hearts, and that will be 3 more hull boxes. 1, 2, 3. And then the last card is the 4 of Diamonds, which will be the steerage gear. And now the French cannot repair their vessel either. The French have an opportunity to fire. There's nobody in their firing arc. And now the British have an opportunity to repair that steering one more time. They finally get it. The British now can make any turns that they want to. Had their steerage been intact, the British might have actually rammed and we would have got to do a fun boarding action, which is really what the British want to do. Understand, if the Ceylon loses all of her hull boxes, she doesn't sink, she strikes her colors, and the British can take her back to Rodrigues and refit her. It will take some time based on the amount of damage that happens, but striking colors, whole thing, right? So we're done with this turn. We can mix these up, and I'm just going to leave the ships right where they're at. We'll mix up our little chips here, and another really quick 1v1 battle. I think, if you go as many as like 5-on-5, you could probably run a nice tidy battle of like 10-on-10 with this rule set if you had enough players. Probably want to limit it to 3 or 4 vessels per player. The British get another opportunity to repair their ship, but of course, and do I need to explain that the red is the British and the blue is the French? We all know that's the standard. But the British don't have anything to fix anymore. The only damage they had was to their steerage. Now the French do, and the French have some choices to make. They got to fix their steerage. They only have 2. Now see here, look, here's where the damage comes in. They only have 2 stars with crew surviving. They get 2 chances looking for a 5 or a 6, and they at least are going to be able to make some turns here on the rest of this turn. The British now have another opportunity, and boy, it couldn't be worse. Look at that. Oh, how the fates swing, the tides swing. Now the French get to fire, and they don't have any ability to do so, because again, we're in the wrong position. So really unpredictable, this game, particularly when you're playing the 1v1. The French don't have anybody in the firing arc. The French get to move, and no matter what happens, the French are going to have to bang. Now, this is where boarding actions get interesting. Wouldn't you know it, boarding actions get interesting when they happen. The last thing that would occur normally is sailing. However, because the French have declared their intention to board the British vessel is not going to move this turn. They are tangled up. We can rationalize that, we can justify it, but I do want to walk you through this. Boarding actions after all of the event cards have been played through, and before starting the sequence, players complete the boarding actions that occurred during the sailing phase or that are continuing from the previous round. To start a boarding action, a ship must make contact. Once such contact is made, the enemy ship cannot move out of contact until the result has been made. So if you had a lot of other vessels going on, this stops the movement of these vessels cold. That might seem a little weird, but again, given that we are now kind of locked, they've locked horns, they're just gonna drift. Now, the way boarding actions work, the crew, the vessel that launched the attack, so we got a couple of things we have to be aware of here. The people that can participate are the crew stars and the marine contingent. And of course, remember, both of these vessels are about the same, except, so they both have 1 marine contingent, and the British have a slight advantage in crew. Now, this is going to be a long shot for the French because they only get to bring 1 star. They have to leave these 7 guys behind on the Ceylon as they try to take this vessel. If you have more marine stars than your opponent, you get to attack once before the crews clash. Because our Marines are shooting at each other up in the rigging, they just basically kind of cancel out. Which means the French are only going to be able to roll a single d6. They will eliminate a full or partial star on a 5 or a 6. Then the British are going to defend with 3. I know this is not a fair fight. The French didn't really have much of a choice. This is the only way they're going to survive this fight. So they roll a 2. And then the British roll. And if there's a single 5 or a 6, with a 6, they are going to eliminate the rest of this crew star for the Ceylon. Because they won that fight, the British now can choose to run away. Yeah, not likely. They're the ones that started this fight. So they're going to stick around and they're going to fight again. If we were playing a larger battle, we would lay those chips out. We would run through the whole activation. Stuff would happen around here, and then we'd come right back to our grapple. Because the British are attacking this time around, they are going to have to roll 2 dice, and the French will defend with a single die. So we'll roll for the British first. Yeah. So they leave, and they are going to eliminate the last of the French crew. However, the French crew, these are simultaneous, so the French crew, sorry about the bump, is going to eliminate the rest of this partial star. So you can see, if the British had rolled and missed on both of their shots, then it would be the French turn to decide, are we going to attack? Now, they can't because they don't have any extra crew stars. So on the next turn, we'd have to figure out if the attacker kills more than the defending crews, but not all of them, in which we just did, right? The British have eliminated them all. Then the attacker can call off the attack and move away during the next sailing phase. Not the case here. The British have successfully boarded and captured the Ceylon. And that is where our adventure ends for today. If we take a look at the campaign map, this means that that's the wrong page of the campaign map, isn't it? We'll have to sit down and run the numbers, right? It's hard to predict these things, but essentially, we can safely assume that the Sirius signaled to the Boatica, and vice versa, right? These two ships were communicating when they were in the chase. Hey, we're going to go here, you go there. We'll, rendezvous at a certain time. So by the end of the day, the vessel will be secured. And starting in the morning, these two vessels will move to each other and coordinate, how are we going to set up our patrol for the day. The Boatica can be called in, and now they can escort the Ceylon back, and this is to scale, remember, back to, they got to go all the way back to Rodrigues. That's their safe harbor. What's probably going to happen is that the Sirius will escort the Ceylon, and now remember, this is starting on the 10th. The Boatica can move back up here. It's upwind. They're probably not going to make it in time, but we got to figure out this red patrol path that the Boatica was following is no longer viable. They're going to be moving upwind. They're going to crawl up to here, and there's a chance that they can intercept the Venus or the Orient or the Marche or the Revenant or the Caroline. They'll move in here, and hopefully maybe they'll go counterclockwise, hoping to rendezvous and bump into the Leopard or the Nereid, so they can get some orders, and, who knows? It's really hard to predict. I will say this. I think that given that the wind is, so we had a shore breeze that kicked the wind, 45 degrees, but we'll still maintain our east by south wind out of the east southeast, which means that in order to get back here, to get back all the way up here, you really are going to be sailing into the wind. That is a little unfortunate. Unless you go way up, I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. But the whole point is that I think for the purposes of this early February, that the Ceylon and the Sirius are effectively out of the fight. But we'll have to sit down next week and chart out a new path for the Boatica to know for sure. I hope you'll join me. Until then, I'm Mr. Wargaming, and I'm praying for you.